My son slid the papers across my kitchen table at 7:14 on a rainy Thursday morning and said, "Dad, this is just to protect you." His hand was calm, too calm. The kind of calm a man has when he has already decided what the truth will be before anyone else gets to speak. The rain tapped softly against the window above the sink. My coffee had gone cold. The old clock over the stove ticked so loudly it felt like it was counting down the last seconds of my life in that house. My son, Ryan, smiled at me like I was a child. Not like his father, not like the man who had held him through fevers, fixed his first truck, paid for his college, and buried his mother with shaking hands 6 months earlier, like a child. "Sign here," he said, tapping the last page with a silver pen. "It'll make everything easier." I looked at the page. Power of attorney, medical authority, Porty transfer permissions. Words dressed up like safety. Words that can steal a man's whole life if he is lonely enough to trust the wrong person. I didn't reach for the pen. Ryan's smile tightened. Across from me, my daughter-in-law Vanessa stood near the refrigerator, pretending to check something on her phone. But her eyes kept lifting toward the hallway, toward my bedroom, toward the room where my late wife Eleanor's cedar jewelry box still sat on top of her dresser. At that moment, I should have said no. I should have told them both to get out of my house. But grief does strange things to a man. Grief makes you want to believe that your children still love you even when every instinct in your body whispers that something is wrong. Then Ryan said the words that made the air leave my chest. "Mom would wanted this." That was when my hand moved, not toward the pen, toward the underside of the table, because 3 nights before she died, my wife had grabbed my wrist in her hospital bed and whispered, "Tom, if Ryan ever says I wanted something, don't believe him until you check the blue envelope." I had thought it was the medication talking. I had thought it was fear. I had thought maybe death makes people see shadows where there are none. But under that kitchen table, taped beneath the old oak edge where my thumb had rested every morning, for 42 years I felt paper, folded paper. My breath stopped. Ryan frowned. "Dad?" I slowly pulled my hand back up. Hid inside my palm was a small note, yeoed, folded once, written in my wife's handwriting. 6 words, "Do not sign. He is leeing." I looked at my son, and for the first time in my life I was afraid of the boy I had raised, not because he was stronger than me, not because I was old, but because I realized my dead wife had seen something in him before I did, and she had prepared for the day he would come for me. My name is Thomas Bennett. Most people in town call me Tom. I am 72 years old, though on bad mornings my knees try to convince me I'm closer to 90. For 38 years, I worked as a property insurance investigator. Fires, forged claims, fake injuries, staged burglaries, missing jewelry, suspicious deaths in houses with new policies. I learned something in that job. People rarely become monsters overnight. They practice in small ways first. A missing receipt, a lie about where they were, a story that changes by one sentence every time they tell it. A nervous laugh, a door closed too quickly, a camera turned away from the place it should have been watching. I spent my career noticing details other people ignored. Then I retired, and somehow I forgot to notice the details inside my own family. Maybe because love blinds you. Maybe because a father doesn't want to see greed in his son's eyes. Or maybe because after Eleanor died, the house became so quiet that even a bad visit felt better than no visit at all. Eleanor and I had been married 46 years. She was not a loud woman. She never needed to be. She could stop a room with one look, settle an argument with one sentence, and see through a lie before the liar finished smiling. She had soft hands, sharp eyes, and a habit of leaving notes everywhere, on the fridge, inside my lunchbox, taped to the dashboard of my truck. "Don't forget your pills. Buy onions. Call your sister. Stop pretending coffee is breakfast." After she died, I kept finding those notes in strange places, one inside an old cookbook, one folded into the pocket of my winter coat, one tucked behind a photograph from our trip to Maine. At first they broke me. Then they kept me alive. I would find one and hear her voice again. And for a few seconds, the house would not feel empty. Ryan was our only child. When he was young, he had Eleanor's smile and my stubbornness. He was bright, charming, restless. He always wanted more than what was in front of him. More toys, more attention, more money, more praise. Eleanor used to say, "That boy was born hungry for applause." I laughed back then. I should have listened closer. Ryan grew into the kind of man people liked quickly but trusted slowly. He sold luxury boats for a while, then insurance, then real estate courses online, Then investment plans that always seemed to fail right after someone else put money in. He was never poor for long, but never stable either. He wore expensive watches and borrowed gas money. He posted pictures of success while his mother quietly paid his overdue electric bill. After Eleanor got sick, Ryan changed, not in the way I hoped. He came around more, yes, but not to sit with her, not to bring soup, not to mow the yard without being asked. He came with questions. Dad, where do you keep the old policy documents? Mom still has that life insurance, right? Did you ever refinance this house? Is the cabin deed in both your names or just yours? At the time, I thought he was nervous about money because death makes families think about paperwork. Eleanor noticed something else. One evening, 3 months before she passed, I found her sitting at our kitchen table with a stack of documents spread in front of her. Her oxygen machine hummed beside her chair. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were clear. When I asked what she was doing, she smiled too quickly. Just cleaning up old things. I looked at the papers, copies of bank statements for party records, insurance policies, Ryan's name circled in red ink on one page. Before I could ask, she closed the folder. Tom, she said, promise me something. I sat down across from her. Anything, if anything happens to me, don't sign papers alone. I almost laughed. Ellie, I spent my life reading papers. I know, she said softly. That's why I'm asking. That sentence stayed with me. But after she died, grief buried it. The funeral was small, rainy. Ryan stood beside me at the grave and cried into a folded white handkerchief. Vanessa kept one hand on his back and one eye on the people watching. My grandson Caleb, only 12 years old, held my hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. He was the only one who looked truly broken. After the service, Ryan hugged me longer than usual. We're going to take care of you, Dad. I wanted to believe him. God help me. I wanted to believe him so badly. For the first month, he called every day. For the second month, every few days. By the third month, he only called when he needed to stop by and check something. At first, the things were small. He asked if he could take my truck for the weekend because his was in the shop. He borrowed my ladder and never returned it. He said he needed the garage code so he could check on the pipes when I was at church. Then my mail started arriving opened. My bank sent me a letter about an address change I had never requested. My house phone rang at odd hours, but when I answered, no one spoke. The motion light over the garage stopped working. The small camera over the back door, the one I installed after Eleanor saw a coyote near the shed, suddenly showed only a black screen. When I mentioned it to Ryan, he shrugged. Dad, that old system is junk. You probably hit a button. That was the first time he used the word probably like a weapon. Probably you forgot. Probably you moved it. Probably you misunderstood. Probably you're tired. Probably you're not as sharp as you used to be. If you have ever had someone slowly make you doubt your own mind, you know how cruel that can be. They do not break you with one big lie. They drip doubt into your life until you start checking your own reflection for cracks. One Sunday afternoon, Ryan and Vanessa invited me to dinner at their house. It was the first real family meal since Eleanor's funeral. I wore my gray jacket, the one she always liked. I brought a cherry pie from Miller's Bakery. I even polished my shoes. That sounds foolish now, but an old man can still hope. Their house was bright, spotless, and cold in the way some expensive houses are cold. White counters, glass table, chairs no one ever leaned back in, a fireplace that looked like it had never burned real wood. Caleb ran to me when I came in. Grandpa. He hugged me hard, too hard. I felt his shoulders shake once. I pulled back and looked at him. You all right, buddy? He glanced toward the kitchen. Vanessa called out, Caleb, wash your hands. His face changed immediately. Not fear exactly. Training. Like he knew what expression was allowed. Dinner began with small talk. Ryan talked about market conditions. Vanessa talked about a friend's renovation. Caleb stared at his plate. Then Ryan cleared his throat. Dad, Vanessa and I have been discussing something. I felt my fork pause halfway to my mouth. He didn't look at me when he said it. He looked at Vanessa. That told me the speech had been rehearsed. We're concerned about you living alone. I put the fork down. I've lived in that house 42 years. That's the problem, Vanessa said gently. It's a lot of house for one person. Her voice had that soft tone people use when they are about to insult you politely. Ryan leaned forward. You've had some confusion lately. I looked at him. Confusion? The bank letter, the camera, the mail. You've been misplacing things. I didn't misplace my mail. It was opened. Vanessa gave Ryan a look, a small look that said, see? He sighed. Dad, nobody is accusing you of anything. We're trying to help. That was when I noticed a manila folder on the sideboard behind him. My name was written on the tab Thomas Bennett. Care plan, care plan. Not family plan, not dad's plan. Care plan. I remember feeling heat climb up my neck. I don't need a care plan. Ryan looked wounded. That was another thing he had practiced. The wounded look. Dad, don't make this harder. Caleb whispered, Grandpa's fine. The room went silent. Vanessa turned slowly. What did you say? The boy's face went pale. I still remember the look on his face. That tiny flicker of bravery disappearing under years of being corrected. Ryan smiled at him, but there was no warmth in it. Adults are talking, buddy. Something in me cracked then. Not loudly, not enough for anyone to hear, but enough for me to understand that the danger was not just pointed at me. It was in that house, too. After dinner, Ryan walked me to the door. He placed one hand on my shoulder. To anyone watching, it would have looked loving, but his fingers squeezed just hard enough to remind me I was smaller now, older now, easier to steer. Dad, he said quietly, you need to cooperate. If you fight us, people will start asking whether you're capable of making decisions. I stared at him. The rain had started again outside. Behind him, Caleb stood at the hallway corner, watching. What people? I asked. Ryan's smile returned. The right people. I drove home with both hands tight on the wheel. The road shone black under the headlights. Every mailbox looked like a witness. Every passing car felt like it might be following me. When I reached my house, I sat in the driveway for nearly 10 minutes. Eleanor's porch light glowed above the front door. She used to leave it on for me whenever I came home late from an investigation. So you remember there's a place where somebody wants you back, she'd say. That night, the light did not comfort me. It looked like a warning. Inside, the house smelled faintly of lemon oil and old wood. Eleanor's slippers still sat near the bedroom chair, because I had never found the courage to move them. I walked to her dresser. The cedar jewelry box was exactly where she had left it. For 6 months, I had not opened it. Some grief has doors you cannot touch. But Ryan had looked toward that hallway. Vanessa had looked too. So I opened it. The top tray held familiar things. Her wedding pearls, a church pin, a silver brooch shaped like a bird. Under that was a folded scarf, blue, Eleanor's favorite. I lifted it. Beneath it was an envelope, blue. My name written across it in her handwriting. Tom. When Rian says it is for your safety. My legs weakened. I sat on the edge of the bed. For a long moment, I just held it. There are moments in life when the dead feel less gone than the living. I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, a small brass key, and a flash drive wrapped in tissue. The letter began, My dearest Tom, if you are reading this, then I was right to be afraid. I need you to listen to me now, the way you listened when I told you the old Miller fire was staged. The way you listened when I said the neighbor boy was stealing from our garage. The way you listened when I told you Ryan was lying about the college money. Do not blame yourself for loving him. But do not trust him with your signature. Your son is in trouble, and he has decided you are the way out. I stopped reading. The room blurred. I pressed my fist against my mouth because the sound that wanted to come out of me did not feel human. After a minute, I forced myself to continue. 3 months before my diagnosis became serious, Ryan asked me for copies of our property records. I told him no. 2 weeks later, someone accessed our safe. He thought I didn't notice. I noticed. I hired Miriam Vale. She is an attorney. She has copies of everything. The brass key opens the bottom drawer of my sewing cabinet. The flash drive contains recordings. Tom, if he brings papers, smile. Act tired. Do not confront him alone. Let him believe you are helpless. Then call Miriam. I looked at the brass key in my palm. It felt colder than metal should feel. The sewing cabinet was in the spare room. Eleanor had used it for quilting, mending, and hiding Christmas gifts badly enough that I always pretended not to find them. The bottom drawer had been jammed for years, or so I thought. The key fit a small lock hidden under the lip. The drawer opened smoothly. Inside was a black binder, a second flash drive, a sealed packet labeled Kakanti Clerk Copies, and a photograph. It was a picture of Ryan standing at our kitchen counter, holding documents from my safe. The date stamp in the corner was from 8 months before Eleanor died. I turned the photograph over. Eleanor had written one sentence on the back. He knows where the deed is, but he does not know what I changed. That was when I realized my wife had not been confused at the end. She had been investigating our son, and she had done it while dying. I did not sleep that night. At 3:20 in the morning, I plugged the flash drive into Eleanor's old laptop. There were 5 audio files, 3 scanned documents, 2 videos. The first audio recording began with the soft hum of our kitchen refrigerator. Then Ryan's voice. "Mom, you're making this difficult." Eleanor's voice came next, weak but sharp. "No, Ryan. You made it difficult when you forged your father's name." My skin went cold. Ryan laughed. Not loudly, just enough to show contempt. "That's not what happened." "It is exactly what happened. You don't understand business." "I understand signatures." There was a pause, then Ryan's voice lowered. "You think Dad will believe you over me?" Eleanor said. "I think your father believes evidence." The recording clicked off. I sat motionless in the blue light of the laptop. I had heard many guilty voices in my career. Some angry, some begging, some arrogant. But I had never heard one that belonged to my son. The second audio file was worse. Vanessa's voice. "I told you we should have done this before she got sick." Ryan answered. "She wasn't supposed to find the transfer." Vanessa said, "If your father finds out, we lose everything." Then Ryan. "Dad won't find out. He thinks I'm still his little boy." I closed the laptop. I walked to the bathroom. I turned on the cold water. And I stood there, with both hands gripping the sink until my reflection stopped shaking. There are betrayals that hurt because someone takes from you. And there are betrayals that destroy something deeper because you realize they were laughing while you loved them. By sunrise, I knew 2 things. First, Ryan was coming back. Second, Eleanor had left me a map. At 8:05, I called the number written at the bottom of her letter. Miriam Vale answered on the second ring. Her voice was calm, professional, and unsurprised. "Mr. Bennett," she said, "I've been waiting for your call." That sentence nearly broke me again. "You knew?" "I knew what your wife feared." "What did she do?" Miriam paused. "She protected you." I looked through the kitchen window at the wet backyard, the bird bath, the maple tree Eleanor planted when Ryan was born. "How much trouble is my son in?" Another pause. "The kind that makes people desperate." Miriam told me not to discuss anything over the phone. She told me to keep the original binder hidden. She told me to make copies of Ryan's papers if I could. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. "Mr. Bennett, has Ryan tried to take you to a doctor yet?" I looked at the unsigned papers still sitting on my kitchen table. "No, he will." "Why?" "Because property theft is easier when the owner is declared incompetent." The word incompetent landed in my kitchen like a stone. I had seen that trick before. In my career, it usually happened to widows, a nephew, a daughter, a caretaker. Someone would whisper concerns, then come doctors, then forms, then temporary help. And by the time the victim realized help had become control, the house was sold, the accounts were drained, and everyone kept saying it had all been done for their own good. Miriam told me Ryan had taken out a private loan using forged documents tied to my property. He had used my home as part of a fraudulent collateral package. When that loan collapsed, he needed clean ownership fast. "He doesn't need your money someday," she said. "He needs it now." I asked how Eleanor knew. Miriam's voice softened. "Your wife found a copy of a notarized document in Ryan's office. Your signature was on it. Hers was too. She told me immediately that neither of you had signed it." My throat closed. Why didn't she tell me? She wanted to. But she was afraid you would confront him emotionally before we had enough evidence. That sounded like Eleanor. Even dying, she knew me. She knew I could stay calm with strangers. But with Ryan, I was still a father. Miriam explained that Eleanor had changed our estate plan before she passed. Not secretly from me, in a cruel way, protectively. She had moved the house and cabin into a trust that required 2 independent witnesses and a court-reviewed process before any transfer could occur if one spouse died. Ryan did not know that. He believed the old deed was still the controlling document. He believed I was alone. He believed grief had made me soft, and maybe it had. But Eleanor had built steel under my feet while I was too heartbroken to notice. Miriam told me to do exactly what Eleanor wrote. Smile acts tired. Do not confront him alone. Let him think he was winning. That was the hardest instruction of my life. Because when your own son tries to erase you, every bone in your body wants to stand up and say, "I know." But I had spent too many years catching liars to forget the first rule. Never interrupt a man while he is revealing himself. Ryan came back that afternoon. He brought Vanessa, and a woman I had never seen before. She wore navy scrubs under a beige coat and carried a clipboard. Ryan introduced her as Linda, a care coordinator. Linda smiled at me with professional sympathy. Not kindness, sympathy. There is a difference. Kindness looks at you. Sympathy looks down at you. "Mr. Bennett," she said, Your son asked me to help evaluate what support you might need. I glanced at Ryan. You brought a stranger to evaluate me. His jaw tightened. Dad, don't make it sound ugly. Vanessa stepped closer. We're worried after what happened with the stove. I frowned. The stove. Ryan lowered his voice. You left it on Tuesday night. I looked at him. On Tuesday night, I had eaten cold chicken salad and gone to bed at 9. I didn't use the stove Tuesday. Vanessa's expression softened into pity. That's exactly why we're worried. For 1 second, rage rose so fast I could taste metal. Then I heard Eleanor's voice smile. Act tired, so I let my shoulders drop. Maybe I forgot. Ryan relaxed, only slightly, but enough. Linda made notes. What medications are you taking, Mr. Bennett? I answered slowly. Not incorrectly slowly. I watched Ryan watching me. He was looking for weakness like a salesman looks for a closing signal. Linda asked me what day it was. I told her Thursday. She asked who the president was. I answered. She asked if I ever felt confused. I looked at Ryan, then back at her. Since my wife died, some mornings are harder. Ryan's eyes flickered with satisfaction. I had given him a sentence he thought he could use. He didn't understand I had given it on purpose. When Linda asked to see my medication bottles, Vanessa volunteered immediately. I can get them. She moved toward the hallway too quickly. I stood. No need. I keep them in the kitchen. Vanessa froze. Ryan smiled through his teeth. Dad, sit down. Vanessa can help. I said I'll get them. For the first time that day, I let my voice sharpen. Just a little. Not enough to start a fight. Enough to remind the room that I was still in it. I retrieved the bottles from the locked tin where I had placed them that morning, after noticing one pill looked different. Miriam had warned me. If they are building a competency case, they may try to create symptoms. I handed the bottles to Linda. She checked them. One bottle made her pause. This dosage seems high. It isn't mine, I said. Ryan looked up. The room changed. Linda turned the bottle. The label had my name on it, but the pills inside were not my blood pressure medication. I watched Ryan. He did not look confused. He looked angry. Only for half a second. But I saw it, so did Vanessa's. Linda cleared her throat. Mr. Bennett, where did these come from? My kitchen cabinet, I said. Where my son had access last week. Ryan stood. That's ridiculous. Vanessa snapped. Are you accusing us? I looked at Linda. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm answering her question. That was the first crack in their plan, small. But cracks matter. Every collapse begins with one. After they left, Ryan called me 3 times. I did not answer. He texted, "You embarrassed me today." Then, "We are trying to help you then. Mom would be ashamed." That last one almost worked. I sat in Eleanor's chair holding the phone, reading those words again and again. Mom would be ashamed. The cruelty of using the dead as a leash is something only certain people can do. I walked to the bedroom, opened the black binder, and looked at my wife's handwriting. Do not blame yourself for loving him, I whispered. I'm trying, Ellie. The next day I met Miriam Vale. Her office was above a bakery on Main Street. It smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. She was in her late 60s, silver-haired, direct, with eyes that looked like they had spent a lifetime measuring truth. She didn't offer false comfort. I liked her immediately. She spread documents across her desk. Your wife was very thorough. She always was. Miriam nodded. She discovered 3 things. First, Ryan had forged signatures on a private lending document. Second, he attempted to access your home equity line. Third, he had been communicating with a buyer for your house. My mouth went dry. A buyer? A cash investor group. Closing was tentatively scheduled for next month. I laughed once. Not because anything was funny, because my mind rejected the words. He can't sell my house. No, Miriam said. He cannot, but he believes he can if you sign the authority forms or if a court grants him control. She pulled out a copy of the papers he had brought me. These are not simple care documents. They give him broad authority over property, accounts, medical decisions, and residence. Residence, such a clean word for exile. He was going to move me. Yes. Where? Miriam hesitated. Brookhaven Memory Care. I leaned back. Brookhaven was not a terrible place, but it was locked. Not for criminals, for people whose families had decided they could no longer be trusted with doors. I thought of Ryan squeezing my shoulder at his house. If you fight us, people will start asking whether you're capable. Miriam tapped another document. There is a hearing request prepared, not filed yet. Emergency guardianship. I stared at my son's typed name, petitioner. Ryan Matthew Bennett, respondent. Thomas Edward Bennett, respondent. Not father, not dad, respondent. That word hurt more than I expected. Miriam watched me carefully. Mr. Bennett, I know this is painful. But pain is not the same as surprise. Did part of you suspect this? I looked at the window below us. People moved along the sidewalk carrying bread, coffee, umbrellas. Ordinary life going on, careless and bright. Yes, I said. I think I did. Good. I looked at her. Good, because denial is expensive. That sentence stayed with me too. Miriam explained Eleanor's plan. The house, cabin, and investment accounts had been moved into the Bennett Family Protective Trust before her death. I was primary trustee. If anyone challenged my capacity, a pre-selected independent physician and legal advocate had to examine the claim before any transfer of control. Ryan's forged documents would fail, but only if we let him step far enough into the light. He needs to make a move, Miriam said. And when he does, we need him on record. I thought of all the people I had investigated over the years. The ones who lied smoothly until they thought they had already won. That was when they got careless. What do you need me to do? Miriam folded her hands. Invite him to talk. Let him bring the papers again. Let him explain what he wants. We'll record it legally. I nodded slowly. Then she said, there's one more thing. She opened a smaller folder. Inside was a letter from Eleanor. Not to me, to Ryan. Miriam did not hand it over. Your wife left this for the right moment. What does it say? Miriam's face softened. It gives him one chance to stop. That was Eleanor too. Even after finding out what he had done, she had left a door open. A mother can know the truth and still hope her child turns back. I did not have that kind of hope anymore. But I loved that she did. On Saturday morning, I called Ryan. He answered with anger already loaded in his voice. Dad, are you ready to apologize? I looked at Eleanor's empty chair. No, I said, but I'm ready to talk. Silence, then his tone changed. Good. That's all I wanted. That was a lie, but I let it pass. Come by tonight, I said. Bring the papers. He arrived at 6 with Vanessa and a different folder. No care coordinator this time, just family, or what was left of it. I had placed a small recorder in the ceramic sugar jar at the center of the table. Miriam had approved it. I was in my own home, my own conversation. Still, my hands shook when I poured coffee. Ryan noticed. He mistook grief for weakness. That mistake would cost him. He sat where he had sat Thursday. Vanessa remained standing. She liked height, power, the ability to look down. Ryan opened the folder. Dad, I'm glad you're being reasonable. I want to understand. Good. He slid a document toward me. This gives me authority to handle things if you get overwhelmed. If? He blinked. What? You said if. Last time you made it sound like I already was. Vanessa crossed her arms. Tom, nobody wants to argue over wording. I looked at her. Then words should be honest. Ryan exhaled. The mask slipped a little. You're lonely, you're forgetful, you're sitting in a house full of stairs, old wiring, and memories. That is not a life. The sentence landed hard, because part of it was true. The house was full of memories. Some mornings. I did talk to Eleanor before remembering she would not answer. But loneliness does not make a man incompetent. Grief does not make him property. What would happen after I sign? I asked. Ryan leaned forward. We'd get you settled somewhere safe. Brookhaven? His eyes widened only slightly. But enough. How did you? Vanessa cut in. It's a wonderful facility. Facility. Another clean word. What happens to the house? Ryan glanced at Vanessa. We'd eventually sell it. It's too much upkeep. And the cabin? Same. Dad, you never go there. I went there with your mother every summer. He softened his voice. That was before. Before, as if love expires with the person. I looked down at the papers. My name comes off everything. Ryan gave a small laugh. Not like that. Like what? Dad, why are you making this sound sinister? Vanessa finally stepped closer to the table. Because he's confused, Ryan. This is what the doctor warned about. Doctor, another piece. I lifted my eyes. What doctor? Ryan froze. Vanessa did too. I said nothing. Silence is useful. People rushed to fill it. Ryan cleared his throat. I spoke with Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris retired 2 years ago. He recovered quickly. I mean the clinic. Someone at the clinic. What someone? Vanessa snapped. This is exactly the problem. Ryan put a hand up. Vanessa. But her anger was already loose. No, I'm tired of this. We have sacrificed months trying to protect you, while you sit here acting like everyone is against you. But that night I still didn't know the worst part. Ryan was not just trying to control me. He had already started building a case against me. The opened mail was part of it. The wrong pills were part of it. The broken cameras were part of it. And then Vanessa said one name. Caleb. That was when I understood something terrifying. They were not only coming for my house, they were coming for the last person I loved. But they made one mistake. They did not know the sugar jar was recording everything. They did not know Eleanor had planned further ahead. They did not know the bank was about to call me. And they did not know one frightened little boy was about to reveal the secret of the bird. In part 2, my son finally stops pretending. The stolen blue box disappears. A hidden camera catches the truth. A midnight break-in changes everything. And inside a quiet courtroom, my dead wife speaks one final time.